In this presentation, we're going to talk about critical thinking and help you understand a little bit more of what is meant by that concept when your instructors talk about assignments or chapters that relate to critical thinking. When we really break down and boil down critical thinking to its essentials, what it entails is a lot of troubleshooting, problem solving, picking apart and dissecting information. So, really, it's a matter of being open minded so that you can drink in new and different ideas, theories, concepts, points of view, opinions. It also helps you with your organization and planning because you are breaking things down into pieces and parts. For example, when you are critically thinking about completing a project for a class, you think about what resources do I need? What materials do I need? How long is it going to take for me to do this? When am I going to have time for the Writing Center to give me some feedback on it? When am I going to meet with my group members? All of that planning and organization means that you're critically thinking about the process in and of itself. Strategic thinking is a lot of planning and organization, but oftentimes it's more goal oriented. So your strategic thinking would be, if I'm trying to accomplish A, what do I need to do to get there? So again, you have a plan in mind and you're trying to determine the steps, the methodology, the system, the resources, etc. But the critical thinking is also going to help you make good decisions and break down what are the pros and cons? Why should I? Why shouldn't I? What are the good and bad features about my options and my alternatives? It also gives you an opportunity to be creative, inventive, innovative, where maybe you aren't going to just do the same old, and you get to break out of those traditional lines and boxes and do something that is maybe more personally relevant and meaningful to you, but also gives you a chance to not only express yourself, but to represent yourself as well. And again, problem solving and troubleshooting. So when your instructor is giving you assignments, basically what they're doing is they're following this theory that teachers learn in teacher school. And basically it's called Bloom's taxonomy. And that's a big fancy word for saying there's different levels of learning, and the kind of tasks that you assign to students will evaluate their level of learning. So the most basic level is remembering things. So that might have been true in high school for a lot of your assignments and middle school, but that's really just a matter of saying, okay, can you reproduce something that I gave to you? So listing facts or just giving me a definition for something. That's really very basic understanding and learning of something. The next level is understanding, and that's taking that remembering one step further and saying, can you give me the definition? Rather than giving me the definition that was in your book, what's your own personal definition of it? So, again, can you put it in your own words, for example? Applying means, can you take that definition, that understanding, and use it in an example? Can you use it in a model, a diagram, a sample, something like that? So again, as you can see, it just keeps building on each other. And that's why you have a variety of assignments. Your teachers might give you remembering, understanding, and applying assignments up front when you're learning new material because it's new to you. So you have to get that basic foundation at hand, and you really have to have a good understanding of it and use and application of it so that you can think deeper, more insightfully, more in depth with that knowledge in different kinds of tasks. And that's where you would use analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So again, that might be where you have to write the essay about comparing and contrasting. It might be how you have to explain how a process works. It might be that you need to come up with your own topic for an idea for a paper. So if you have that basic understanding for the first three, you should be able to go into more complexity in the last three, the analyzing, evaluating, creating. And that's where critical thinking really falls into place, into that analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So really, the really boiled down essentials of critical thinking are to really look at any situation you're in and stop and think about it. And first of all, recognize any assumptions that you have. Do I think this is going to be easy? Do I think that this is only going to take me a little bit of time? Do I think I already have the resources available to do this, for example? You need to evaluate the information. You need to then plunge in and look at it. So let's take a reading assignment for an example. You have to read 60 pages of anatomy and physiology, and you need to read 60 pages of managing your success. Well, managing your success is a much more personally applicable content base, where anatomy and physiology is going to be a lot of theory, a lot of vocabulary, a lot of terminology. So it's going to be a much more dense and much more complex learning and reading process in anatomy and physiology than it will be in managing your success. So if you just think, oh, 60 pages usually takes me this much time to read, and the assignment that I have in my Managing Your Success class, I'm going to be able to write about myself. Whereas in anatomy and physiology, you're going to have to know all that vocabulary, those theories, label diagrams, things like that. It's going to be very different. Even though it's 60 pages and 60 pages, the expectation, even after the reading, is very different. So you have to evaluate it differently. So then you would have to draw those conclusions and say, well, I might have to spend more time on my anatomy and physiology, and I might have to study for it differently outside of my reading so that I'm prepared for my quiz, my exam, my homework. Whereas with my Managing Your Success, as long as I've got a good idea of the concept and the idea, I'll be able to write about myself, my personal experience, my personal understanding for the homework assignment. And then you can come up with your plan of action. So that's basically a boiled down dissection of what critical thinking is really all about. So now we get into the idea of, okay, there's critical thinking, and one of the main tools in critical thinking is something called the academic argument. And, well, what is an academic argument? Well, if you see on the left, it's not that kind of argument. It's not bickering or fighting. It's really defending or persuading or representing an idea, a concept, or a value. It's very methodical and systematic, and it may represent an emotional, subjective topic, but you're going to explain things objectively. So subjective means it's from your own point of view, your own perspective, but objective means you're stating it in a factual kind of way. An academic argument should promote dialogue and conversation, and it really shouldn't push antagonism or mean or rude replies or behavior. So if you look at the example on the right, here's someone who really is, more on the negative side of the argument there, and it doesn't accomplish very much. When you are presenting an academic argument, you're really trying to respect the differences that you might have, whether it's with the ideas of other classmates, the instructor, or the actual topic in and of itself, and simply agree to disagree. There should be a point to your argument, and it shouldn't just be a back and forth where all you're doing is contradicting each other. An academic argument is, I'm stating my point of view and my perspective, you're stating your point of view and your perspective, and we're seeing how they're similar and seeing how they're different. You're just like a lawyer or a prosecutor in a court case. You really should be able to convince or persuade someone of the value of your point of view. You don't necessarily have to convince them to believe your point of view, but you should be able to persuade or convince them to see that what you're saying makes sense and has value, even if the person doesn't agree. You don't always win arguments. And that's often a misperception about that. And sometimes the academic argument is really there. The purpose for it is to demonstrate the importance of a situation or perspective for better understanding about it. So, thinking about that, don't get caught up in the word argument in the traditional sense that you're used to. So, how do you construct an academic argument? And you're going to be asked to do this in a number of papers or classes that you're going to encounter throughout your college career. It could be anything from talk about the your perspective on the death penalty, or what do you think about the current political candidates, or what do you think about global warming, or compare and contrast theorist A to theorist B. This is how you're going to have to break it down to demonstrate your understanding and to be able to give your opinion, but not in the sense of just writing your opinion. You need to write it in an academic format where you're presenting an argument, not stating your opinion. So you want to have a point in mind. You want to think about why you believe it or believe in it, or why you think it's a good idea. Want to think about why others don't believe it or believe in it or don't think it's a good idea. You don't want to rely on your own thoughts and opinions or even your experience, because again, that's not being objective. You really want to be backing up your side or your point of view by finding reliable and meaningful proof that you're right. And you want to explain how your perspective is better than others. So if you use this example on the screen, you can see that here's what I think, these are my reasons, here's my evidence, these are the pros and cons. The counter argument would be this is why other people think that it's not such a great idea or why they are in disbelief of it. And when it says here's the weakness, you would say, but this is why they're wrong. And then you would come to a good finish from there. So again, a good model for your argument is to have a good, strong thesis that has your premises, your claims, your assumptions, and it answers the question why. Then you want to be able, in your argument, you want to be able to back up that information with evidence. And you want evidence to be good, strong, solid evidence that's very difficult to dispute or question. So you really want to stay away from, again, your opinions and your experience. Though you can use it, it's the weaker type. You really want to find things like articles and books and statistics that back up your point of view. That's why when your teachers assign things, they want you to use peer-reviewed journals and library articles and books, and they want you to cite those references because they want them to be legitimate. Finally, you want to address the opposite side. A lot of times when people are writing their papers, they realize they're really short on word count and they say, oh, I was supposed to talk about the death penalty and why it's good or why it's bad. And they forget that there's a lot that you can write about the opposing point of view. So let's say, for example, you were writing a paper on why chocolate ice cream is better than vanilla ice cream. You would be able to talk about all the wonderful merits of chocolate ice cream, but you're going to run out of ideas about that, and there's only so much information that can back up legitimately that is true, that chocolate is better than vanilla. So you can spend some time talking about, well, a lot of people would argue that vanilla is actually better. And this is why they think that. But here's how they're wrong. And you can really beef up a paper by doing that. And you can get help with these kinds of things from the Writing Center. So you want to ask good probing questions. And one of the rules of thumb is to not only to ask who, what, where, when, and why, but to add who cares and why should I care. And that will help you not only explain your point of view, but to also help you problem solve, like in the example here. So make use of the critical thinking techniques I've provided for you here, and you'll do well not only on your papers, but you'll be a better decision maker as well.